It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Now, you can get a hold of me at Opperman Investigations and Strategic Solutions. You can get a hold of me through my email, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, otherwise, if you need to get a hold of me about the radio show, it's oppermanreport@gmail.com, or you can go to the website, oppermanreport.com. If you like the show, Opperman Report, Patreon. You go to Patreon, everything you hear Monday to Friday, AM/FM radio, you can hear at Patreon with all the ads and the commercials cut out. Plus, I've always got all kinds of exclusive documents. I don't care who you are. Some of the stuff you're not going to find anywhere else. Sometimes I get it directly from the people involved, and nobody has it. So there's always free documents up there. So even if you don't want to subscribe and get the free ads and the free commercials, you go there for the free documents. You can sign up for free and just get that free stuff. And also to get an email notification when we put up new content, so you might see something you like. Otherwise, every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, you get 3 hours of I work like a dog. 3 hours of brand new podcast content each week, 1 hour solo, and then 2 hours of a brand new podcast guest about all our kind of topics. Now, our guest today, I'm extremely excited about our guest today, Jess Micheals. You could find her at jessmichealsspeaks.com. Jess Micheals Speaks on Facebook. Jess Micheals Speaks on Instagram and Threads. You can also find her at 3joannes.com. That's for her business, which involves a tech company, and they have I can't read my own handwriting, but it's a sexual first aid protocol app. So that if you come across this kind of a tragedy in your life, this kind of trauma in your life, the people around you can pick up this app and know what steps to take to protect you, the evidence to take you for treatment, and all that kind of stuff. Now, let's see here. That's about it. This is our guest today, Jess Micheals, and she's a survivor of the Epstein situation. JessMichealsspeaks.com. Jess Micheals, are you there?
I am. Hi, Ed.
I'm good. I kind of butchered your 3joannes.com app. But
you're fine. You're fine. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. And before we get all into that, tell us about yourself. Who is Jess Micheals?
So firstly, thank you so much for having me on. And that question is always a hard one because you actually prepped me really well. And you said, well, what would you say if we met like on our kids' like soccer field? And it depends on how much I wanted to trigger you. So sometimes I start with a trigger warning and I say, hello, I'm trigger warning. I'm an advocate for sexual assault survivors. But if I really want to be kind of, out there, I will say I'm a 1991 Jeffrey Epstein survivor. I'm a TEDx speaker and an advocate out there working towards the release of the Epstein files. And that's what's really consumed my life, actually. And in the last, I would say 4 or 5 years, ever since I started facing the fact that I was a rape survivor of Jeffrey Epstein back in 1991.
And I can already tell you, the first thing they ask you is, well, do you think he was killed or do you think it was suicide? Am I right?
Yeah, they almost always do. Yeah. And all I will say, and this is only my opinion, having been married to a narcissist, is that narcissists don't commit suicide. Yeah. That's only my opinion from my own experience.
Okay, Jess Micheals. But before we get into all the Epstein stuff and your advocacy for these victims of this trauma, abuse and stuff, describe to us this 3joannes.com thing that I butchered before.
So one of the things that I realized after really facing what happened to me is that people have no idea what to do when you disclose to them. And that leads to what we can call the second wound, from outright betrayal, someone saying they don't believe you, or as experience like I have, I've told family about it, and even when they said the right thing in the moment, they completely deserted me afterwards, and I did not ever hear back from them, and it was extremely painful. So people just don't know what to do, and I honestly don't even think my family, this group in my family, doesn't love me or care about me. I think they honestly have no idea what to do. And the truth is nobody does. Even when I started interviewing teachers who are mandated reporters, they say, yeah, they tell us to report, and then what? We have no idea what to do. So I decided to create the protocol for what happens when someone tells you that they were sexually harmed. And it is outside, this is the really important part, Ed. It's outside any legal definition of sexual harm. We don't need to know whose fault it was when a car accident happens, right? We don't need to know who ran the red light. The emergency workers just come along, they attend to that patient. They don't need any more information to be able to deal with the wound. And that's the way I am treating this, is like, hey, someone discloses to you, here's what you can do, because we know that research says there's a natural recovery period after a traumatic event. There's this acute crisis window in those first 24 to 72 hours. And then there's this 90-day natural recovery period. And if we provide support, safety, and trust in those 90 days, we can significantly minimize the rates of post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's what my protocol is. It's a 90-day protocol with everything from scripts, notifications and tags and ideas of what to do next over those 90 days, as well as resources. And so what we don't talk enough about is the degree of post-traumatic stress disorder that sexual harm survivors live with, which is often higher rates than even what is experienced by combat veterans. And I got that stat from the Pentagon Inspector General's 2019 managerial report. And that's what I want to change. If I'm just focusing on this one thing, Ed, if I can change this one thing, that sexual assault survivors don't live with post-traumatic stress disorder like I have for the last 35 years.
Then how would this, okay, you want to make this available to like guidance counselors and teachers and stuff, right? Is it available to them for free? Is this funded but through donations or something? How would they get their hands on this?
That's a really great question. Actually, my app is free right now. It's on the App Store and on Google Play. We're right now at the free stage because we're doing a lot of public beta testing. We're asking for people to use it and give us feedback. We are offering it. It's really peer driven, right? You know, one of the things I found out in my research is that 90 to 99% of peers tell another peer when something happens, but nobody prepares that peer to know what to do. And so sexual assault survivors, sexual harm survivors end up carrying it all by themselves and having to navigate this plethora of options while they're traumatized. So this tool is really for anyone, but we are first focusing on institutions. So we are approaching institutions like colleges, universities, Greek life, NCAA athletics, to train people to be a prepared peer, to know what to do before something happens. Because think about it, Ed, if I teach you, because right now all we have in colleges is prevention and bystander training, right, as far as sexual harm goes. But we don't do fire prevention safety classes and then fire drills and say, well, since you have that prevention in those fire drills, you're not going to need these fire extinguishers anymore, right? Like, you don't need a fire extinguisher. You don't need to know what to do if it happens. And so I'm filling that gap of somebody going like, okay, we have this sexual harm prevention. We have all of this education and awareness. We have bystander training. We're understanding consent. We have all of this out there, but nobody talks about, but what do you do if it actually happens? What does a parent do? What does a friend do? What does a roommate do? So that's the gap that I'm filling. So it's really for everyone right now. It's free. And we're looking for all the feedback we can get, Ed. So please test it out.
No, I'm going to get this myself because I only tell you, so many times I'm the first point of contact. Like
Yes.
someone's been victimized, they've been abused, they had this trauma happen to them, and just like you said, the first person they go to is their friend who's just as clueless as they are. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I'm like the third person or the fourth person.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And there's only so many people that you'll actually tell your story to until it'll click and go, oh, I can't tell anybody. Like nobody knows what to do, and I'm on my own. And I actually had the first person I told, the first person who believed me was actually Joanne. That's what my company is named after her. I told her, and she believed me right away with very little information, which was amazing. But the only thing she understood was let's go to the police. Now, let's talk a little bit about 1991 really fast, Ed. In 1991, as we understood from laws that I understood, was that rape was determined by how much a victim resisted. So in 1991, when Joanne said, let's go to the police, I was like, nobody's going to believe me. I froze. And so how many people have a situation where they can't prove what happened, or they froze, so they self-blame, so they believe they don't deserve any support? And so if we can just remove the legal definition, be like, look, I was harmed and I just need somebody to let me know that I'm safe. We can greatly diminish post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a medical nervous system injury.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to point out too is anybody out there, you've had some kind of trauma happen to you, and if you're thinking, I can't prove, forget those words, I can't prove. That's my job to prove. You have no idea. You have so much proof, you don't even realize how much proof you have. So don't worry about I can't prove. We'll let the professionals work on that. But now, what about the police? Because I know I guess there's allegedly some kind of certain divisions in the police department that are sensitive rape victim, advocates or whatever. But I've never met one. And
I've never met one.
And the ones I've dealt with are just horrible.
Yeah.
So shouldn't they be getting this kind of training too?
Yes.
Every single one of them should have this app.
Okay, so Ed, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't announced publicly. You're getting it, like this, your audience is getting it first. I am in the process of writing Sexual Assault First Aid as a practicum, as a how-to manual. Right. And the initial book will come out, but then we are going to start to focus on sexual assault first aid for police officers, sexual assault first aid for educators, for parents, for the medical profession. You would not believe how many gynecologists get disclosures, how many pediatricians get disclosures, and nobody knows what to do. And so this will eventually be a series, and I will be teaching this. And the concept is like, hey, if we deal with the injury first, this traumatized person, we get them to safety, guess what, Ed? I believe that's going to get us more justice.
Yeah, and these young cops too, man, they love to get on their phone and pull up apps and start looking for information. So this would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and what's it called again? It's a 3joannes.
3joannes.com. The app is called, With You Too, WITHYOUTOO, With You Too. It's hashtag With You Too. We're also on Instagram. I have an Instagram account for my app. You can find it in all of the app stores. And you can also just go check out our landing page, the 3joannes.com, because it'll tell you about how, this is just an adult skill we need to start teaching young people.
Yeah, With You Too. That was the part that I couldn't read my handwriting.
I hate it when that happens.
I took one look and I panicked. I said, oh no. But before you mentioned before that before you got into this whole career, I guess this advocacy now, you were a dance teacher.
Yeah. Dance is my passion. I'll tell you a quick background story that I did do a TEDx talk, and I do share a little bit about it, how I started dancing really late. I grew up in a trailer park in Connecticut, which sounds like an oxymoron, but they do exist. I paid for dance classes myself at 16 years old. So I was literally starting about 8 years later than the average kid starts dancing, but I was a natural. I was just really good, really fast. And by 21, I was a working professional dancer, and that's its own category. I wasn't aspiring. I wasn't just testing out the waters and trying it out. I was a consistently working professional dancer at 21. And 2 weeks before I met Jeffrey Epstein, I had danced with Aretha Franklin in her Everyday People video. I had been living in Tokyo where I worked as a model. I danced with MC Hammer there. Like, I was working, I was thriving. I eventually ended up going into teaching. I surprisingly found that teaching ended up even being more fulfilling for me, which is why going into advocacy and now being a keynote speaker out there about sexual harm, I really thrive in an educational space. And so I thought I loved dancing professionally, but teaching became my absolute passion. However, this is another reason for my advocacy. When you live with post-traumatic stress disorder for an extended period of time, it detrimentally affects your body. And so gradually over time, I am now living with chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, exercise intolerance. I can't teach anymore. It's very upsetting because it's so much a part of my identity for 30 years. And so I don't teach anymore. But I've used my experience to focus now on education in a different way.
I got to encourage you for a second, because I was dying just a couple of years ago. I had a bad heart, and you can have such a turnaround in your life. It is so possible. And I just pray and hope.
I don't give up. I don't give
definitely,
up.
Yeah. Please don't.
I was actually, it was so bad. I was bedridden for 2 years. I'm better. So that's why I still do have hope, even though I am an adult, like, I do have hope. I don't know that I'll ever get back to a teaching schedule, but boy, would I love to hop into a hip hop class.
Yeah. Do they still have hip hop? But the other thing too is, listen, what you're doing right now is so important. Let's stay focused, because this is what you're doing right now is just so important, for these kids out there and stuff. Now, it is the dance industry, the dance business. That's ripe for this kind of abuse and stuff like that. Young models, young actresses, right? So
it is.
What did you, before you ran into Epstein, did you see things around you?
Oh, all the time. I mean, it was also the 90s, right? Ed, I think it was a really different world in the 90s. It was just expected that there was some price to pay for you to pursue a career in performing arts. Now, dance was different in that it wasn't like acting in Hollywood, right? But I definitely had experiences as a model that were extremely uncomfortable. You kind of have to just be used to being looked at as a piece of meat for sale. And it's interesting, as I've grown older and matured, I've started to recognize how much, as a young woman in the 90s, we were conditioned to believe that our value was in how we looked. I walked around with skinny pretty privilege for a long time, and recognized that I would get attention. And it was interesting because, like I said, I grew up in a trailer park in Connecticut. And when I would tell people from Connecticut, the assumption right away was, oh, upper middle class, college graduate. And I was like, no, did terribly in high school and lived in a trailer park next to my best friend who was on state, and like thought that was going to be my life. And, I think that, luckily, a lot of the industry is changing, but look, that only started in 2017. So back in the 90s, it was just a given.
Jess, in the 80s, it was even worse.
I'm sure. I think the 90s were probably the best of all of those years, and it was awful. It was absolutely horrific.
On Wall Street, those brokerage firms, they would have, the Wall Street guys, an ad in the paper: attractive, bubbly receptionist. I
answered some of those ads for temping. Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I know. So
I mean, it was rampant, and
yeah.
and it was yeah, it was rampant, and it's sad to think about now. And I remember talking to some of my friends that I had danced with in the 90s, and I was telling them about what happened to me with Epstein and why I ended up just leaving New York after working for years to get there. I ditched it. I just ditched it. And when I finally reconnected with them and I told them, and they were like, yeah. And I said, well, did it happen to you? And they're like, it's not if, it's how many times.
Yeah, it's like 1 out of 4, is my experience. Anybody I tell what kind of work I do, everyone's got a story, or they have a friend with a story. It's just unbelievable. Thank God my daughter's been spared. I thank God for that.
In my experience, and being in advocacy now for 5 years, Ed, and I hope everybody that's listening will hear me really clearly. In my experience, when I do a speaking event, I ask the same question. I say, if there's anyone here, if you're willing, let's do a little experiment. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, please stand. And the majority of the room stands. And when I say majority, I say in rooms of 10 to 500, everybody but a single digit of numbers, like 9 and under, stay sitting. So my equation is it's likely 3 and 4 women, based on my experience. 3 and 4 women.
Yeah, well, people would be much less likely to share with me than they would with you.
Yeah, and we don't make it safe to really share with anybody. People have carried it forever. I have people disclosing on my social media, I'm in my 60s. This is the first time I'm sharing. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm in my 70s. It just happened to me in my 50s. And I didn't know what to do. And here it's 25 years later. And thank you for speaking up, because I'm finally sharing it.
Yeah, and it seems like the pendulum is swinging again, and it's being more condoned and accepted with this right-wing crowd out there right now. Hearing some of the things they talk about, these social media influencers and stuff.
It's worse. It's worse, and honestly, they're kind of shining a light that is also making people more bold and speaking out. So I do think there is a shift, because I had a viral post recently. And it's where, I did a Katie Couric interview last year. And in that interview, a year ago, I shared that someone had commented in a post, putting 1991 Epstein survivor in your bio isn't a flex. You should be embarrassed because something should be kept private. And when I said it back then, Ed, it didn't go viral. It was just a clip, and this year we posted it. My social media girl and she shared that quote on my social media, and it is gone mega viral, millions and millions of views, hundreds of thousands of likes, because people are like, no way, we are not keeping this quiet anymore. That's what kept this in the closet for so long. So I do think in the last year of the Epstein files, Transparency Act, and the advocacy that's been going on and we're speaking loudly about, I do think that there's a bigger pushback against all of the voices out there right now that are acting as if sexual harm is not a big deal.
Okay, but what about, I'm concerned when I see how this has become a national pastime. How many of the people that are fascinated with this topic, that obsess on it day in and day out, how many of them are really concerned, really truly concerned with survivors and trying to make a change, or just watching a Lifetime movie channel in their head? Okay,
I agree. That is very true. This is what I'm going to say to that, though, Ed. I think there are people out there that follow what's happening because it's fascinating entertainment. and they're just intrigued by the drama of it, and they look at it, it is way outside of them, and so they can separate themselves from it, and they can just be entertained by it. And then there are the survivors, and this is what I'm going to tell you, Ed, is that in your audience right now, I'm going to guess a majority of people are survivors. Male, female, non-binary, all of them, a majority are, but they've never spoken up, they've never felt safe enough to speak up, and they speak out in my comments. And so I think the biggest thing that this administration has underestimated is that there are far more sexual harm survivors out there than there are supporters of this administration. And I stand by that.
I hear you. I hear you 100%. I hear you. And I hope that we could have more movement on these issues.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Now, one of the things we were talking about off the air is that you wanted to stress that we shouldn't just be focused on this James Bond villain, and how this thing is happening every day. And I was talking to you too. Some of these young ladies I worked with, anytime they came into contact with the police, they were risking arrest. These were legit victims. You couldn't miss it, being trafficked. But anytime they came into, one of them was arrested. Coming
it's awful.
Right. So how can we bridge that gap from this attention we have on James Bond, this Jeffrey Epstein story, and what's going on day in, day out to all of our neighbors and our friends and our kids' friends?
So when I do speaking events, I let people know what happened. So for me in 1991, I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein through my roommate. So I trusted her. She'd been working for him for about 6 months. So I felt safe going to him. And I was assaulted by him in this penthouse on the Upper East Side, and I froze. And I didn't stop. Not only did I not stop him, I took off my own dress. Because the conversation shifted, and he got angry at me, and something in me, like a switch flipped, and I just complied. And I laid there and I froze. I don't even know how long it took me to get my clothes back on. And I left and I got on the subway going the wrong way. And I was pretty catatonic until the next day. And the reason I talk about that freeze trauma response is that when I was telling my attorney about, and I was like, I just laid there like a stupid 5-year-old. And she said, Jessica, did you go through child sexual abuse? And I said, well, yeah, my grandfather, ages 4 to 6. And she said, in that moment with Jeffrey Epstein, you were a 5-year-old. And I think it's really important that we talk about this part of it, because before I met Jeffrey Epstein, I was thriving. I was confident. I was even assertive when I went up to the penthouse, and I asked him assertive questions, to assert that I knew what I was doing, that I was an adult, and yet I still cowered in that moment. And I don't know an Epstein survivor, or many survivors, that were adult survivors of rape that weren't assaulted as children. And so I think it's really important for people to remember that it's easy to point to the big case that's in the news every single day, so that we don't have to confront Grandpa or, Uncle Joe, creepy Uncle Joe, or that coach that is always a little handsy with his athletes, or that, that priest that is always, around children. There are ways that we use. It's a way to dissociate from what's actually happening in front of you. And so I really do try to remind people that you're willing to hear me talk because it's Jeffrey Epstein, but sit down, because let me tell you about Grandpa.
So true. And these predators, they have a special instinct, especially a guy like Epstein that was a full-time obsession with this guy. They have an instinct that they can spot. They can see 3 kids in a room, and they can see the one that was abused as a child and has already been gone through the trauma. They have a sixth sense to go in there that is just beyond. Some of them just, these street pimps, they just get it naturally. They just,
Yes.
you know.
But it's really, it's actually, it's fascinating. Predators know their prey, and it's not, they just look for who's going to be compliant. So,
Yep.
so I thought I had actually sat down with a behavior analyst, and we went through what happened sentence by sentence, moment by moment, from the first time I met him to the second time I met him. And she could point out how every single thing he said to me and how I responded and then how he responded to that was a test. So everything was this subtle test where he was checking my boundaries, checking to see what I was gonna give up, what I was willing to do, where I was gonna be compliant, where I was gonna push back. And it was this constant test. And he did that throughout the first meeting that I thought was generic, a generic interview, all the way through actually raping me. And she said at one point to me, she said, Jessica, in 1991, at 22 years old, you were no match for Jeffrey Epstein. And I want you to think about that, Ed. One of the reasons I advocate, and one of the reasons I put 1991 in my bio, is because I want people to remember that he was doing this so much longer than anyone is willing to talk about.
Yeah, and people too, especially the young girls, we were talking about before, the Royal Palms girls, they would talk about how he was always pushing the boundaries physically. You know?
Yes.
And, that's how Jeffrey is. He had this reputation of always pushing boundaries. Now, what was the initial pretext that got you in there and meeting with him?
So in 1991, I had just come back from Tokyo, and my roommate was telling me all about this wealthy Wall Street guy that she was working for. He was training her in massage, and she was a professional dancer. And this is really important for people to understand for context. Back in 1991 in New York City, there wasn't a licensing for they called them masseuses. It wasn't a massage therapist; it was a masseuse. So he was offering to train her in being a masseuse, teaching her international techniques, flying her all over the place, and she was getting paid to train. So I was jealous, Ed. I was jealous. She's telling me all about this job. She's making all this money. She's getting to travel the world. She goes, Jessica, sometimes I'll show up in we'll fly over somewhere and I'll be in this city for like a week and I only do 3 massages. So the rest of the time I just get to go. I have all this money and I get to go explore the town. And I just thought she was so lucky. So 2 months go by of me hearing about Jeffrey. And this is actually, I think, part of the grooming that she did to me. Yeah. I would learn that my roommate went on to work for him off and on for 18 years. But this was the grooming process. Those 2 months were how amazing he is, where she was going, where she was flying off to finally her saying, hey, I got a dance job and Jeffrey's looking for a backup person. Do you want to meet him? And I was like, yes. I thought this was an incredible opportunity to be paid, to train, to have a side job when you're in a gig type career where, sometimes you have work and sometimes you don't. And what I understood was that he would let her work whenever she was not doing a dance contract. So it was perfect. So that's how I ended up there. And I trusted her. She was somebody I knew for a year and a half. We did our first dance job together. I lived on a cruise ship with her for 5 months. This was not a stranger. Was not somebody I met on a street. She was somebody that I loved.
This is one of the things, too. Recently, I got a call from one of the lawyers talking about how many of the young women that became involved with Epstein were encouraged to recruit other women so that then later on they could be in fear that, oh, no, I'm just as guilty as him. I got to keep my mouth shut.
Exactly.
Yep. This guy was, man, I tell you, these guys, they are just so good at this. They're just so absorbed and all this, just obsessed with this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you said, we have to, it's good to remind people that this is It's not just about Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein was not some genius that invented this. He did basic sex trafficking 101. It happens in every town, in every state in our country and across the world. So don't think for a second that he was just so smart. He wasn't. He wasn't. There was nothing unique about this type of operation, and there's nothing unique about the lack of justice happening right now on the national scale. This is the norm, and it's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I've been so tempted to mention other names as celebrities and other people who the same, doing the same thing, paying for the acting lessons, and what altruistic, wonderful guys there, Okay. Now, what about this? Now, when you were in contact with him and your friend, your roommate there, you mentioned this is the same woman you gave me the name earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and she's 18 years. Any indications of all this stuff about blackmail and spying and Israel and the CIA and any of this stuff?
No, because I went. I met him the first time. She came home and she's like, he liked you, call this number and make an appointment for a trial massage, because he gave me a book to study. That was one of the hoops to jump through.
Right.
And I met him the second time. And after it happened, Ed, my thought was, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that he did it to. And I thought, well, she would never send me to somebody that was doing that to her. And then I didn't want to tell her, so we just never spoke again. And we were in a like a dancer apartment, so everybody's like leaving, coming and going, when they get contracts. So after I came back from a contract, I was too scared to live in New York anymore after that, and I just moved out. So we didn't stay in touch, but we have a mutual friend that stayed in touch with her. That's how I knew that back in 1998, this mutual friend said, my roommate, her roommate too, showed up at her wedding and said, oh, I have to go early because I'm hopping on a plane to the ranch with Jeffrey. Mm-hmm. So we knew in 1998 she was still there. And she had been bragging, this is what I forgot to tell you, she had been bragging to that mutual friend back in the early 90s that she had massaged Prince Andrew twice in Martha's Vineyard, long before Prince Andrew said he even knew Jeffrey Epstein. So things were happening, but I didn't know how deep this case went until the last year. I kind of was traumatized all on my own. I didn't really do a deep dive into all of the other horrific things that are happening. It's really hard for me to read the files. It's really hard for me everyone thinks like they'll send me, here, did you see this? Have you heard about that? I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm really okay with it. I'm just really trying to be hyper-focused in what I do so that I can do it rather than get caught up in too many of the conspiracy theories.
Couple of questions. Now, when the litigation with Prince Andrew was going on, did you think, oh, hey, let me give them what I know and insert myself into this?
No, because I didn't see any of that was going on. I first saw his face in Julie K. Brown's Perversion of Justice article. It was work. It was lunchtime. I was scrolling through my phone, and all of a sudden I see his face, and I didn't remember his name. So I'm looking at the face, and suddenly I'm having trouble breathing. My whole body starts to shake. I start to sweat, and I was like, wait a minute, could this be that guy? Luckily, Ed, I saved, because I was a professional dancer and because I was going to auditions, but I'm an avid journaler, and I didn't always get a chance to write down everything that I did in my journal. So I saved all of my day planners. So I have like all of my 80s and 90s day planners. And I went back to my day planners, and it seems I had written down in my day planner his name, his address, his phone number, his assistant's name, her phone number, and the exact day that he assaulted me, exact time and day that he had assaulted me. So I thought I was the only person that he'd ever raped. Like, that's what I thought in 2018. I thought I was the only person. I had no idea until Virginia and Michelle and Shantae and Courtney were those first 4 girls to come forward. And all I kept saying when I saw that article and I'm reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, it wasn't my fault. All this time, for 27 years, I thought it was my fault.
You know, I focus on certain things, and to find an old planner like that, an old calendar or an old planner, is such gold in this kind of litigation. And the average person will think, well, I don't have any evidence. I don't have any proof.
Yeah.
You got gold right there, man.
You know what you know what's so funny too is because obviously I hadn't really looked at it in a long time, and when I went to go look back at it and I opened it that night. That night in 1991, when I went back to I opened up my planner and I wrote a-hole next to his name. Ooh. And I had forgotten it until here I am 27 years later, opening up that day planner and reading it. And it was like my 22-year-old self was sending me a message back like, yeah, it was that bad.
Yeah, and then also, too, you go back and read that stuff. Even when you're reading stuff from the day before and the day after, week before, week after, it brings back so many memories, and it brings up so much trauma again. Yeah. Well, what about now? When did you get into the whole thing with therapy and healing yourself from all this?
That's a great question, and it's a little bit of a story. So everybody have a seat. This is a little bit of a trigger warning. So I'm not just an Epstein survivor. Bizarrely, I'm also from Newtown, Connecticut, where the Sandy Hook shooting happened. Oh, boy. And I was teaching dance. We lost 3 little girls at the dance studio that I taught at. And I was also working for one of the families on a program, a youth leadership program called Wingman, where we were teaching courage, connection, and inclusion to young dancers. I created the whole Wingman for Dance program. And it was like I had 5 years of working with this Sandy Hook dad, and he was teaching me how to take a tragedy and turn it into something beautiful. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was literally given 5 years of training, right? And while I'm working with a Sandy Hook family, you're allowed to get free therapy because of the vicarious trauma. So they had the Newtown Resiliency Center. So I was very lucky I was able to connect with a therapist there. And I've been with her ever since. So I've been extremely lucky, extremely privileged to heal and have therapy that most people don't get, the most cutting edge therapies in trauma since 2018. I started therapy in 2018, that same year that I happened to see his face. And because of that, Ed, I feel a great sense of responsibility. 26 people died in my town, 20 of them 6-year-olds. And I got trauma therapy out of that. And so I use it. I heal like it is my full-time job so that I can be effective as an advocate because of the 5 years of training I got working for Sandy Hook Dad.
That's incredible. Something good came out of it, but my God, that's just a double whammy.
So I do it in Dylan's name and all of the children's name, because when I said I'm a dance teacher, the littles are my happy place. Ed is in a circle of 4-year-olds and tutus, and we're choosing our color of our butterfly wings. I mean, that's where my happy place is. And so I do this for that, the next generation, for those little girls in tutus.
No, I took my daughter to dance class, with a little tutu. I sat there, watched the whole thing.
Yes. I'm that teacher. I'm the bubbly, hi, kids.
Oh, yeah, I forget it, man. You couldn't tear me away from it. I love that stuff.
It's a blast. There's nothing like it.
But they grow up. If you're a teacher, they're the same age every year. But your kids grow up, man,
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
I know. All right. So, in relation to this timing of getting therapy, how did it work out where you got involved in litigation?
Litigation. I didn't actually have a case. I just went through settlements.
Okay.
So I didn't. Yeah, I was part of the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund and other like settlements, the settlements that have popped up. So I didn't actually have to go to court or anything, but I did have to go through, obviously,
Yeah, the application. Yeah.
claims administrators, and you have to do, it's not a deposition, but you have to put in your victim statement, and then you have to be interviewed. And so I by those legal standards, I am one of the, like, what is it, 195 people that have been identified as survivors.
And what was the decision like to decide to take those steps?
It was awful. I had no idea how hard it was to actually write a victim statement. And because I'm somebody that's pretty optimistic, like I'm a overachiever in the optimistic and hope lane. Like I will default to that every single time. And at one point my lawyer sat me down and they're like, look, you're not telling what happened. You're not sharing how this affected you. I want to know who you were before and who you were after. And when I had to sit down and face that, Ed, that was devastating. And interestingly, it fell in March of 2020 when COVID started. Like, so March of 2020, I took a month to write my victim impact statement. It was excruciating. It was healing. It was, my whole world changed once I started to face how much I had buried. I mean, I didn't even put all of these things together initially. And I share it regularly. The physical response, like within 2 weeks of the assault, I broke out in this cystic-like acne all over my face. Never happened before, never happened again. Within 3 months, I was so anxious. I was scared walking around in my own skin. And then I couldn't sleep at night. I had to leave New York after I'd worked so hard to get there. And within 6 months, I could pull a pair of size 0 jeans down off of my hips without unbuttoning them. When I talked to a friend who knew me at that time, I said, well, what do you remember? Because I really don't remember a lot. She goes, Jessica, you were this tiny little thing and you just slept all the time. It is painful to go back and look at it. And at the same time, I grew a level of compassion for that 22-year-old girl like I'd never had before, because all I could hear, like after it happened, Ed, when I laid there and I froze, and after it happened and I got on the wrong subway and was like, you must be so stupid. How could somebody just lay there like that? How could somebody not stop it? You must be so stupid. And in that moment, I just stopped trusting myself. And when you're 22 years old, launching into the world, launching into your career, and beginning life as a new adult, to suddenly have a body that betrays you, have a friend that you trusted betray you, have a person that was supposed to give you opportunities betray you, the world suddenly becomes a really dangerous place. And so I really struggled to feel safe. But to finally sit down and write a victim impact statement, it was excruciating, and it connected dots that I had just not connected. And it gave me a sense of grace for that young girl.
Now, people hear these huge amounts, $290 million of Deutsche Bank settlements in the Virgin Islands, 200 million, 400 million. Do you know anybody who received any kind of really life-changing huge? It's heartbreaking. Some of these poor women, who are.
It's ridiculous. It's crazy, because what I think a lot of us didn't know and understand was how much. How much they were getting away with not giving us reasonable settlements, because there was nothing, not the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund or any of the other bank settlements. There was no negotiating. You couldn't, it was like, take it or leave it. That's it. So you couldn't say a word. and you couldn't. It was painful, and 1991 was 30 years ago, and when I hear things from people about how they think that all of us are millionaires, and they don't really look at what we've lost, B, the physical ramifications of post-traumatic stress disorder, the health conditions that we're all living with, the loss of income, and the loss of time.
One of the things that drives me crazy, okay, and I've been following this case since 2013. I did the first radio show about Jeffrey Epstein in 2013. Couldn't even find a guest. Nobody even knew the name, okay? And one of the things that drives me crazy is when people say, they reached a settlement, and it's a victory for Epstein because now we'll never know what happened. And my thinking is, everyone wants a settlement. The plaintiff wants a settlement. The lawyers want a settlement. The investigators want a settlement. Everyone wants a settlement. That's what they want. Not to be dragged through this whole big giant thing for somebody else's entertainment. It just drives me crazy. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where do you land on something like that? If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. And it's not only that. I think that people miss the point of, first of all, because we never talk about the harm and the injury that happens when you've gone through sexual harm. Like there's no discussion of the actual injury. We don't think about that. We only think about crime, not a crime, guilty, not guilty. And so people don't understand the devastation of that crime in physical terms. It's why I talk about, hey, after 6 months, I could pull a pair of size 0 jeans down off of my hips without unbuttoning them. I was having physical responses in my body. And so people don't talk about what is lost when you have a nervous system injury. Time, like I said, career advancement, lost productivity. They don't understand the injury. So it's not like they can look at a car accident and understand why somebody would get a settlement, but they look at sexual harm as an event. And at worst sometimes they're like, well, you just made a bad choice, right? Like we hear that all the time. You just made a bad choice and now you just made money off of it. That's what we hear, which is ridiculous. But the other thing that people don't talk about settlements is that it is a very valid form of restorative justice. Very valid form of restorative justice, where I can take you to court and I can let you know you have harmed me and you have to pay for that harm. When a criminal case goes through, Ed, a sexual harm victim gets nothing. Like there may be justice in that they're off the street, but I could still be sitting here living with this injury that detrimentally affected my ability to work.
And usually they're getting nothing anyway. Okay, let's face it. They're getting 3-5 years, man, would be a big deal. So that's a whole. And you know what? You've been through something like this, and you mentioned a lot of things, but the relationship problems, addictions, there's all kinds. You got all kinds of things going on, man.
Exactly.
This isn't a fun road to begin with, and you get a little win. I mean, it's not $1 million, but you get a win. You made them pay. You made them suffer. And I think it's worth it for that.
I think it is. I think that's where people have to recognize, like, nobody, they're not suing for the money, they're suing for the damage. Right. And I don't think people, they're like, they're just trying to get another payday. No, we've been through damage, like actual physical injury, career injury, relationship injury. I have lost 35 years of my life that I will never get back. Never get back. And it has detrimentally affected my health outcomes by up to 20 years off of my lifespan. What do you think that's worth?
I hear you. Now, were you involved in advocacy and this type of healing healing projects before the settlement, or this came in after the settlement?
So I wasn't involved with advocacy regarding sexual abuse or harm or trafficking until after the settlements. And that was primarily because I thought I couldn't do it. And it really took me having, well, it was COVID, right? So I'd been laid off from the foundation because we were struggling during that time. So I got laid off at the exact same time and still had a salary. So I had time to just sit and think and decide what direction I wanted my life to go in. And where I landed was, how could I teach kids in the youth leadership program that I helped create around courage, connection, and inclusion? How could I teach them to stand up for other kids if I wasn't willing to do it myself? And so I started to just think about, well, what does that mean and what does that look like? And so I started in advocacy, really focused on what had helped me, which was I have a really good psychoeducation now because I have this phenomenal therapist. And so that's how I started to learn about PTSD and trauma and the neuroscience of trauma. And I realized that one of my skills and one of the reasons I was a really good, pre-dance teacher for a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old is because I can take really complex topics like teaching gravity to a dancer, like teaching centrifugal force to a dancer and teaching it to a 4-year-old. I could take the neuroscience of trauma and teach it to the layperson. And so when I was sitting there, I was like, okay, what do I wish people knew? What do I wish was different in this area? And I just decided to get really, really good at that one thing.
We're talking to Jess Micheals, JessMichealsSpeaks.com. She's on Facebook, Jess Micheals Speaks, Instagram, Jess Micheals Speaks, and on Threads too. And the app we're talking about is With You Too. That's from
hashtag With You Too.
Hashtag? Oh, hashtag With You Too.
Yep, hashtag With You Too. Like me too.
I had a brain freeze there. Hashtag? What are you talking about? What is that hashtag? Okay. But the company is called 3joannes.com. Joanne with an E. Now, we met because I saw you were advocating, not advocating, what would you call it? I guess lobbying for the destruction of Todd
Blanche.
Yeah, fighting for
fighting tooth and nail. Yeah.
So, okay, no, first of all, who is Todd Blanche, and why does Jess Micheals, who's an expert on this stuff, why do you think he should not be confirmed? Well, he's been confirmed, but why he should not have been confirmed? Attorney General, right?
Yeah, he was confirmed being Attorney General, and I worked really hard along with all of my sister survivors and Virginia's family to really block that nomination. There are a bajillion reasons why Todd Blanche should not be Attorney General right now. And only one of them is centered around specifically the egregious release of the Epstein files, meaning things that are redacted that shouldn't have been redacted, things that should have been redacted, like survivors identifying information that was not redacted and was just put out there to the public. And as someone that's a prosecuting attorney, he should have known better, and he should take full responsibility for that, right? That is, if you are in leadership, regardless of who did what, you are responsible. And what I experienced being one of the survivors along with Virginia's family in that meeting with Todd Blanche was that there was zero remorse, zero responsibility. And he did not treat us like victims of crime. In fact, his first words when we got in there was like, well, I don't really want this to be combative, which was like as if he was giving this subtle, trying to lean us towards not confronting him with the things that he had actually done. And so I don't think he's an honest person. I think he will only protect this president, who is in the files 38,000 times. I just think it's impossible with his background of being Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney, that he will be able to be trusted with this office of attorney general. However, Ed, I also have this, like maybe the only reason Todd Blanche pays for the crimes he has committed, the crimes against the Epstein Files Transparency Act, is because he has to be the Attorney General of the United States. Maybe that's how he pays, because he's actually officially in charge. I don't know. That's my take.
Okay. Oh, God. Well, we talked off the air about a week ago, and I asked you, did he have any guilt on his, when he's meeting with, because he represents, he was a criminal defense lawyer for Trump. He says he's still Trump's defense lawyer. He still is. It's still his client. How you know, we had the Friday Night Massacre where a bunch of attorney generals resigned on a Friday night not to betray their ethics. And here's this guy, a whole nother world. And I asked you, did he have any guilt on his face when he's looking at these people and he's crapping all over?
No, he was interrupting us. He was correcting us. We would say 6 million files, and he'd say 3 million. There's only 3 million files. He would, I commented on something that he had said. It was after Pam Bondi was let go and he became acting attorney general. And he said something like, well, we're going to leave these Epstein files. And this is not verbatim, but he said something to the effect of, well, we're going to leave these Epstein files in 2025. We're not bringing them into, this year or anything in the future. And he's like, I never said that. So he lied. He just lied. He had no interest in, no matter how many ways we said it, Ed, that he harmed crime victims. He personally, being in charge of these, he harmed crime victims. Yeah. He had zero care, zero concern.
I've done criminal defense work for 45 years, and I've dealt with some really horrible criminals, and I tell you, and I can't think of one I've ever worked with that could be sitting in a room full of victims like this, or survivors like this, and just would not have that kind of guilt on their face. Now, but take me into that room. Is it a big room? How many people are in the room? I know you told me off the air too that they brought in a woman to sit behind them just to make it look.
Okay, yeah. So this is hilarious. So we go to the hearing, and the very first day, he is testifying at the hearing, and the files get mentioned. And he points to the woman behind him, Allie. I can't remember her last name, but he points to her and he says, yes, and I have somebody special here. That's the person that they could talk to. And I believe it was Senator Durbin who was questioning him. He's like, no, I want you to be there. And he's like, well, we have this specialist in human trafficking, and she's right behind me right here. So she was positioned right behind him. Yeah. And Durbin didn't let her in. It's like, well, then she can sit next to you when you meet with them. It would still take Senator Tillis to say, you have to meet with them for him to finally make that plan. So we get in there, and they kept trying to put us onto her to see her, and we kept saying no. And finally he said, okay, I'll meet with you at 4:30. So we met with him.
So he was trying to duck out before it even started.
Oh, we found out after that meeting that she had only been hired, the hearing for Todd Blanche was on Wednesday and Thursday. She was hired on Tuesday.
Wow.
She knew nothing about this case, Ed.
Wow. And
she was hired to sit in the hearing visibly. So she was somebody to point to, and then she was hired. She was brought in to our meeting, and so we get there, and this is hilarious. The Department of Justice set up a Teams Zoom call so that all of our attorneys could be in the room with us on Zoom. They couldn't figure it out, so for 15 minutes, all of the survivors are sitting at a big, long rectangular table with Todd Blanche not talking. While his DOJ is trying to figure out how to make the Teams Zoom. And it was one of the younger, the the 20-something advocates that was with us from World Without Exploitation that had to tell them how to use the equipment.
Yeah, but you want to know what? I wonder how much is that used car salesman, when they put you in the room and they got you sitting there for hours and hours and he's running back and forth. You know what I mean? Like just
no, they were honestly clueless, and we were just kept looking at each other, and you could tell that he was sweating just because it was so awkward. They didn't know what to do, and they kept trying it, and it wouldn't work. And yeah, it was pretty funny.
Hey, real quick too. Wait, this woman they hired at the last minute on Tuesday before. What is she doing today? Is she still working there now, or they gave her?
I think she's still there, and she is someone that has a reputation for being an expert in human trafficking, and this is how I think they are trying to make it look like they are doing something about this, when we all know that they're not. She didn't even know anything about our case. She didn't. So he comes in, we're dealing with the Zoom thing. He comes in and he walks around, and he walked around to shake everybody's hand. We agreed, we're not shaking his hand. We need him to know that we're serious. I didn't even look him in the eye when he came around. He finally sits down and he goes around the room and he does ask us to introduce ourselves and tell a little bit about our story. And he's writing notes. And that's when at the end, he finishes like, well, I don't want this to be combative. And, he kind of acted confused. Like, why would we want to see him? He doesn't have any power. But why did we need to see him specifically? He couldn't quite accept even responsibility that, dude, you're the one that was in charge of the release. Of course we want to see you. Why would we want to see anyone else? It's not just about the case. It's specifically about the release. So he seemed confused. We were only supposed to meet with him for half an hour, and we did keep him there for an hour and a half. So that felt like a win. I don't think he expected to be stuck with us for an hour and a half. However, he could not have been more evasive. And I'm going to guess, Ed, after 9 hours with Ghislaine Maxwell, he wasn't evasive with her. And that felt like you're more patient, more interested, more congenial to a convicted sex trafficker of children than you are to the actual victims in this situation. Like, how can you explain that? How do you
she left her meeting with a great deal. She got a great.
Yes,
they moved her. Yeah,
and he had the nerve to say, well, we had to move her because she was getting death threats. And so we all looked, we're like, so you put her in a lower security situation? Yeah. And what about us? And he just, it was like he would just sit there and not say something, or he would take the conversation down a different track.
But wait a second, did he acknowledge that it was his decision to move her?
No, he did not fully acknowledge that it was his decision. He said it was the
Bureau of Prisons.
Bureau of Prisons, yeah.
Very unlikely, I gotta say.
Right. Strange coincidence. But and that's why he went to go see her, though. He went to go see her because supposedly she had requested, and we're sitting there going, wait, but we've been requesting to see you, but she just has to make this like tiny little request to you, and you're there for 2 days. You traveled to another state to see her for 9 hours over 2 days, but it was problematic, and we're coming to you. We're literally on your home territory here at the DOJ building, and you can fit us in for 30 minutes. That's
was this meeting recorded or documented in any way?
No, no one was allowed to record anything. He said, we're not recording anything. We ask you not to do the same. But there were like 9 attorneys on the call that were all there with us.
Gotcha.
And then around the room, there were attorneys around the room.
How many people in the room altogether?
So in the room, I'm going to say there were 6 survivors, including Annie Farmer, who was on screen, and then Virginia's family, Sky and Amanda, 2 advocates that came with us from World Without Exploitation, and then against each wall, like on both sides of the table, there were chairs, and I would say there were 3 or 4 on each side, so probably another 8 people. There was Allie, and then there was another gentleman from the FBI. So 2 people sitting at the table with us, with Todd Blanche. By the way, one of the things that we did narrow down is that he said he agreed. This was what I thought was really interesting. He agreed that every other FBI has done a terrible job at investigating. I said, actually, wouldn't it be like a lack of investigation? And he points to me and he goes, yes, a lack of investigation. And I said, great. I said, wouldn't that be considered negligent? And he's like, well, I don't know that would be negligent. And I said, well, then define negligence. And he's like, I'm not going to go into that with you. But we have not found anything in these files. And I said, but you haven't found anything in those files, and you're admitting there was a lack of investigation. So basically, what he said we needed to do was, if we had any additional information, or I said, what if we have files? What if we see files and we go, these are investigative leads? Where's Ed? Listen to this. Are you sitting down?
Oh, yeah.
He said, we have to call the FBI, bring them the FBI files that we found, bring them their own files, and point to them. And then if we want, start all over it, like just give our testimony again. Now, that's a trap. That's a trap. Because what if we say something different from what was in our original file?
That's true. Yeah, there's a
it's
penalty.
Been years.
There's a penalty. Well, there's also a criminal penalty for giving.
Yeah. So it's been years, and that's a normal thing for survivors. You do remember more, say more. Like it was another trap. It was a trap.
No, but he said, you asked him how many files are unreleased, and he said there's 3 million more that are not released.
No, when we would say there are 6 million files, and he's like, no, they're not. They're only 3 million.
What did he say about more files that have not been released?
He said, he said in the hearing, he called them non-responsive. And I don't know if he heard me say what I said on media that night, because I just screamed. I was like, non-responsive is a non-word. Like, that's not even a word to talk about to be non-responsive. He said everything from they were duplicative, they were privacy, or he had every other excuse of why there are only 3 million files. There are not 6 million files.
I know for a fact there has to be more because my client made an FBI report, and where's the follow-up on that? They just did nothing. An attorney made an FBI report, and they did nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I told you, and anybody that's followed my story knows that one of the reasons why I advocate is because when the FBI requested anyone with information to come forward in 2019 when he was arrested, I called them, and it was the first time I was ever really voicing it out loud to any law enforcement, and it was very scary. And then a couple days later, Detective Walter Harkins from the NYPD sex trafficking force calls me back, and he says, well, we have to call everybody back, but I have to tell you, it was 30 years ago. What do you want us to do about it now? That's the response after I called to give them information about my roommate.
Who's in the files?
And I said, sir, you told me to call you, and I'm telling you this person has information. So one of the reasons why I'm such a kind of angry advocate about this is that I would then spend a year trying to get through to that detective. All of the emails that I have between the two of us, Ed, are not in the files. Yep. So finally, a year and a half goes by after I was badgering Southern District of New York to tell them, look, I have information here to tell you. When I told Southern District of New York, they finally got through to Special Agent Amanda Young. Special Agent Amanda Young called me, and I screamed at her because I didn't know she'd been working on this case for a long time. I screamed. I was like, I have been trying to get somebody to listen to me for a year and a half. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody will take a statement. And she was very kind. And she said, that never should have happened. I am so sorry. And I will listen to anything you have to say. Interestingly enough, on my 302s from that conversation with Special Agent Amanda Young, that whole beginning part of our conversation is redacted.
Yeah, see.
And that's not supposed to be redacted.
But your initial intake call is in the files?
It is.
Okay.
So I can clearly show I called in 2019, and then I have finally my interview in 2021, but all the emails back and forth where I kept messaging him saying like, hey, did you find her? Did you find her? Did you find her? Did you find her? What's new? What's happening? Those emails back and forth over a year are not in the files.
So now, what did he say? Were you able to bring that up there at the meeting and say, "Well, I know for a fact that the phone calls and letters are not in the files and emails are not in the files"?
So there were a lot of us, and there were a lot of questions. So I didn't get to that, but I actually submitted. I'm one of the 6 survivors that submitted an official statement opposing Todd Blanche's nomination, where I attached all of the emails and my EFTA files. The links to my EFTA files and images of the emails in my statement. And I don't know what happened to that statement, to be honest. I have no idea if it just gets entered in. I don't know if somebody sees it or not. But I said there are 11 lines of my interview with Special Agent Amanda Young, and it's at the very beginning and at the very end. And at the very end, what she told me was that my victim statement was going to be in the prosecution's case against Ghislaine Maxwell. And she was explaining everything to me about what redactions are and how my name would have to be shown for the trial, but they would redact all identifying information. And then I never heard from her ever again.
Okay. What about... you have these emails that are not in the files. Now, Katie Fang has this big celebrity lawsuit here, right, where she's getting stuff unredacted, right? Now, what about, I forget what it's called, where a third party can file a motion in somebody else's case. It's slipping my, I'm getting old, man. I can't remember. I can't remember something I remembered a year ago. So you could file a motion like that and insert yourself into this case. Say, look, Your Honor, you're all pissed off at them about these other files. Here's some files that I know should be available and be unredacted and be released, and they're not doing it.
And they're missing. That's a really good point. I actually thought about that this weekend and reaching out to Katie and just sending her her attorney my full statement with all of the files and links. Yeah, I thought about that. Thanks for mentioning it again, because I think it's really what my case shows is how much they avoided following through on investigating. And I believe that is just the common denominator for everyone. They just didn't investigate. Yeah. They would get to a certain point and then they would just drop it. And I will tell you, I actually had this in my statement. I gave them 2 leads. I gave the mutual friend that I told you about earlier, and then I gave the girl that was actually the recruiter. So I gave them 2 credible leads. They didn't follow up on either of those, Ed.
Yeah. I know.
It's very disconcerting, and this is what, when you and I talked about, you said, what do I hope that your audience leaves with? I hope that your audience recognizes, because I get this all the time in my comments, they're like, oh, it feels so bad for you guys. This is just awful. I hope you guys get justice one day. And what they're really missing is that this is happening in every single court in our country. This level of injustice, betrayal, lack of investigation, closing of files in cases that should be investigated, in cases that should be brought to trial. And what you're seeing is just this national case that people think is it doesn't touch them. They think it's something way out there that they don't have to be part of, or they don't have to look at. People, if they're doing this to us in plain sight with 6 million files and they're only releasing 3 million of it, if they're doing this to us in plain sight, what is happening behind closed doors? What is happening in every single state and local court in the country?
Yeah, I was working on a case back around 2018, 2019 with this young lady that was being trafficked back in Vegas. And I would come on the air crying, saying, we need resources. I'm calling all the people on TV, all their resources and stuff.
Yeah.
And they said, well, call the police. Call the police. Every time she comes in contact with the police, she's getting arrested again. She had mental illness, I know, man. I know. But back to the redactions again. Now, what was his excuse for redacting names of their friends and not redacting names of survivors, of plaintiffs, of legitimate victims?
Like I said, we tried every single way to explain the harm and to ask questions. Like Virginia's family brought up, look, Virginia's deposition names names. And he tried to explain to us, he's like, well, if Susie is raped by John, we only have Susie's word for it. We need Mary to come along and say, oh, I was also raped by John. Like, he literally used this C-spot run level of talk with us about how justice works. And it was extremely condescending. So he was saying they can't investigate the names that Virginia gave because she's not here anymore. And we have strategists and attorneys behind us, and they were all like, that's ridiculous. You investigate for murder victims all the time. And not that she's a murder victim. I know personally from context that not everybody knows. She did take her own life.
I agree 100%. And for had a rough time,
Had an extremely rough time, but and trauma does horrible things to your brain and your body and who you choose as a relationship. But he could not take any responsibility for a single thing that he did. He would act confused. He would distract to something else. He would say, no, I never said that, or that's not what really happened. It was a constant wall up of disconnect. There was no, how you can sit in a table with someone, they could even be far across the table, but there's an openness to connection. There was a wall there.
Now what about a lot of these attorneys? I think he's mentioned 10 attorneys. A lot of them are former prosecutors, criminal defense lawyers, all over the place. Were any of them say, well, then, okay, if you can't prosecute, let my client go? They had to be calling him out on this stuff. Were they allowed to talk?
They were really trying hard to let it be our conversation.
Okay.
They were trying not to say anything. And one of our advocates from the nonprofit, who is a prosecuting attorney, also happened to say, like, what is the Department of Justice planning to do to help these survivors feel whole again? And his response was, well, can you really ever do anything to feel whole again?
Oh my God. This guy has no sensitivity training whatsoever, man.
No, opposite of trauma informed.
But you know what, man? How do you take on certain clients? I'm not going to mention any names, but how do you take on certain clients? You know what I mean? Who are adjudicated rapists, and frauds, con all this kind of stuff. How do you take a client on that and have any kind of self-respect to begin with?
Yeah. And it's a shame because honestly, Todd Blanche is not dumb. He is a smart man.
Okay.
But he is definitely using his powers for evil.
But I don't think he's Attorney General level worthy either.
No, that doesn't mean he's Attorney General. Not at all. But he's not dumb. Yeah. He's not dumb, and it would be disingenuous to say he was dumb. He is really smart, and he is using his powers for pure evil. It's bad. It's really bad.
And so he was confirmed, and now there's no recourse. And what about what you want to call out some of these congressmen who voted for him that were maybe on the fence that failed you personally?
Honestly, anyone that voted yes, anyone. I don't care whether they were with us or not. Like, I even listened to Josh Hawley curse out meta in an unrelated case, but like talking about child sexual abuse material, I guess, or child harm on Meta. And I remember hearing him say things like, "Who'd you fire? Who did you fire? Who did you fire?" And all I kept thinking is, Josh Hawley, how come we didn't hear that? Who did you fire with Todd Blanche? Who did you fire when you messed up the Epstein files? Who did you fire when victims' names were released? Who did you fire when clearly people are being protected that are co-conspirators on a list that says co-conspirators? Who did you fire? We didn't hear any of that energy from him at all. And so all of them that said yes, all of them that voted yes, I feel like voted against survivors. So there's an advocate, an attorney online. Her name is Heather Ashley, and she said something that's now going to become my mantra: vote like you want the Epstein files released. Because I think anybody that is, for any reason, any tiny little reason, not wanting to see these files is either in them or knows somebody in them, period.
What about this list of co-defendants, of possible co-conspirators? Did you bring that up to him and say, well, is anything going to happen to these people? There is a list of them, right?
Yeah, I actually brought that up. I think I brought that up in my statement where I pointed to the 2015 DEA report that came out that had a clear list of 15 targets. One of them was Epstein, and he was unredacted, but the other 14 are clearly redacted. And this is my take on that. It is a 20+ year investigation, and 20+ years. Multiple agencies. DEA enters the chat in 2015, like literal cartel hunters enter the chat. Like, and they're calling this like the Epstein crime organization. And the DOJ is like, but it was for 2 people. I'm calling it Blanche math. Blanche math is like, yeah, it was just Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There's nothing else to see here. It's crazy. They're literally putting all of this in front of us and gaslighting the American people. And I'm sorry, if senators that were on that Judiciary Committee and in the Senate as a whole can't do that math, they should not be senators.
And what was DEA looking into? Drug trafficking, money laundering, or was that also
all
sex
of it?
Oh,
all of it, all of it. And that's why won't Senator Wyden has been working hard on getting the financials released. He can't get those financials. Oh, another thing I brought up in the Todd Blanche meeting was that I knew from talking to people at the New Mexico Attorney General's office that they were not cooperating. The DOJ was not cooperating. As a matter of fact, I did a media hit with like right around the hearing, and I got a quote from that office to ask them. I was like, well, what do you mean they didn't help out? And they said the only thing the DOJ sent them was like 30 redacted like files that they could just get themselves and news articles. They're not complying with the request, which is a really common request of a state attorney general's office to reach out to the DOJ and say, hey, we've opened a criminal investigation. We need these files unredacted. So in the meeting with Todd Blanche, I asked him specifically about New Mexico. And he's like, we're compliant. We're helping. We're cooperating. And Allie, the human trafficking expert that was there, she's like, oh yeah, we're cooperating. How she knew, I don't know. But when I reached out, they said, no, they're not. And now that's why New Mexico Attorney General's office is suing the DOJ, because they are not cooperating. They are hiding files from the only criminal investigation that's happening.
You know, there's a provision for conflicting investigations where a state is investigating something. You check with FBI and DOJ to see, am I conflicting with your investigation? And you share information back and forth. So to hear that they're not cooperating is a big deal. Now, who are you talking to over there in New Mexico? And what is the status of their search of this ranch? Because my understanding, it's a 7,000 acre ranch. and they got like $2 million budget. That's nothing. That's not even a weekend at the Days Inn with the kind of staff that you would need to search that property. $2 million is nothing.
I actually, we happened to meet Attorney General Torres when he came to DC, and we all happened to be at a conference there, and so he requested a meeting with us. We learned very little information at the time. There weren't any criminal investigations open because it was just in June. So by the time they actually opened up criminal investigations officially, I had only had a business card from one of his staffers, and that staffer, I had told them like I would gladly talk with them. So I haven't even done my interview yet with them.
Gotcha. Oh, and your involvement in that is that your roommate was traveling down there.
It's more to fill them in about my roommate, because she specifically mentions the ranch, and that was in 1998 that she was flying out to the ranch. So I know that this woman who was the recruiter for me, that she traveled all over the world with him. She's in all the files. She is one of the. You remember the picture of Mendelssohn and Prince Andrew and Jeffrey came out of them in their white robes? That picture at Martha's Vineyard. Yeah. It was in the last year. Yeah. So she was at that. She was there for that.
Do we know if she's gotten a settlement or compensation from the fund, or if she's first that, has she gotten any compensation or any kind of settlement?
No, I think that. I think she has struggled severely. Jeffrey Epstein paid for her cancer treatment.
Oh, okay.
I think that she doesn't think she did anything wrong. I don't think that she has said nothing happened to her and she didn't know anything was happening. You can't spend 18 years, 20 years in that environment and not know something was going on. So I don't believe her. I also know that she was a childhood sexual abuse survivor as young as 2 years old. So this is a woman, again, predators know their prey. Jeffrey knew exactly who to choose, So it's such a complex thing, because I know she caused harm. And I know she's a victim as well.
Yeah,
I know
where do you cut that line off? Yeah, that's a whole nother.
That's a whole other topic, and it's hard. It's hard. Like, I'm compassionate towards her, and the way my therapist put it, she goes, "Jessica, you didn't bring anybody. You didn't bring anybody." And I was like, "You're right. Like, there's a reality to it. Like, I didn't bring anybody. I didn't. I can't fault the girls that went back, because there is still, again, he was very manipulative, and some of them were very, very young, and he knew how to manipulate people. But it had just been so devastating for me that one time that I never went back. But the girls that brought other girls, especially girls that brought the children, like you and I were talking about, the high school girls. That breaks my heart, because he purposefully targeted children.
But if you're targeted as a child and you're brought up in that lifestyle, and then it's time for you, now you're an adult and you need to go make a living. Well, you just like anybody else. Okay, well, my father did this business. You go into the business that and there's a lot of that. With this happens in this area where they become traffickers themselves, or run an escort service, or go into the sex business. These things happen. This is what happens. And then there's also another thing too, what I've seen, where these adults in the modeling business, these adult modeling agents, women ones,
Yeah.
Well, I went through it. It happened to me. I'm fine. You know what I mean? And they everyone has a thing in their head. Everyone's making excuses for their own behavior. We're our best advocates, and excuses of our own behavior. And
I do think, I think that one of the things that, everybody thinks of Jeffrey as just being like evil, like it was really obvious. Like I know I heard Melinda Gates, I think it was like, I knew he was pure evil right away. I didn't. He seemed really nice, actually. He seemed really professional. And he really worked hard to be a likable person. And so, I didn't see it at first. I think a lot of people, he really presented himself as someone like, oh, I can help you, I can rescue you, I can get you things that you never would have ever been able to get before. They don't lead with the monster. They lead with, I can help you and I want to help you.
What have you learned about his political fixing and money laundering and anything like that? Have you exposed any information that we wouldn't know?
No, I don't really. The only thing I really was interested in, or like kind of enamored with, was the idea that the DEA had come in and that Senator Wyden was requesting records that that the DOJ is refusing. So I didn't. Like I said, I can't go too deep because, it's a little stressful. This is a whole world that I didn't really knew existed. Again, like I said, for 27 years, I thought I was the only person Jeffrey Epstein raped, which is, crazy now. I know that it's bad, Ed. I know that they wouldn't be going to these lengths to protect these people if it wasn't really bad.
Yeah, and you look at some of these law firms, Kirkland Ellis, that was defending a sex offender, and you look at their other clients, which are governments and and DuPont, and Chrysler, and they got this one sex offender client, and they're all like, Ken Starr, Kavanaugh, Brett Kavanaugh, all these. Acosta worked there. Bill Barr worked there. This is a white shoe law firm, man. Is doing political stuff, not sex crimes, defense, So what's going on there? What does we're talking again to Jessica Micheals. JessMichealsSpeaks.com, on Facebook, Jess Micheals Speaks, Instagram, Jess Micheals Speaks, and Threads, Jess Micheals Speaks, and also to her company, 3joannes.com, which is this hashtag with you too app to help people get through the initial shock and trauma of being a sex abuse victim, a sexual harm, as she likes to call it, victim or survivor, and then how to take those steps to deal with all of that. Quick question I have for you, and I got to apologize. I didn't tell you what time it is. We're way over time. I like it too much to sit here and pretend it's not happening.
I'm chatty, Ed.
No, I feel so guilty though, because a little half hour over, and I'm not going to say nothing.
It's okay. I peeked. I knew.
Okay, but I know. I just, in the interest of full disclosure, one question, because you mentioned the thing about Virginia Giuffre, okay, and the tragedy that happened there, and how because you have information, stuff. How do you deal with? Because this is such a, like we said, the national pastime. All these experts online, and even some of these legendary experts with these 500,000 Twitter accounts that are experts on all of this case. Where they get their information from, I don't know. But how do you deal with living through this, dealing with the people involved, and then being corrected by people on the internet trying to explain to you what really happened? That they know all about the Mossad, and they know all about the island. And by the way, you never had any contact with any island or anything, or any planes, right?
No, I was in New York City, and what's fascinating too about my experience in 1991, this is the weird, like, quote unquote fun fact. So the same month, so I was raped on July 9th, 1991 by Jeffrey Epstein. It was that same month, the end of the month, that Les Wexner signed over his power of attorney. Isn't that weird? But so this apartment, this penthouse that I was in was not like anything. I don't know if it was a rental. It wasn't the townhouse. It wasn't anything described anywhere else by anybody else that I know of.
Oh, so this is a totally unknown address that nobody else knows of.
Exactly. But the address I went for the interview was Les Wexner's address, like his Madison Avenue address. Because Epstein had an office in Les Wexner's building.
Fascinating. See, all these little details. This is important stuff. Now, do you have the address of where you actually met him in person? Do you have that address written down someplace or documented?
I had the address for the building, the Madison Avenue address,
Gotcha.
but I couldn't remember. I don't know if Christine just gave me the name on a piece of paper, and then I just had that paper because I didn't put it in my day planner. I only put the time I was meeting him. Yeah, so I didn't have the exact address. I just knew what it looked like in my head. Like I could describe the penthouse really well because it was very unique. It had a sunken-in living room, and I'd never seen that before.
But one issue right now to address is people who says, well, they were never at the island. They were never on the plane. You were never on an island. You were never on a plane.
I was never on an island. I was never at the ranch. I was never on a plane. And I think that that's also really important is a lot of people think that there were just like, first of all, they think trafficking is just that he trafficked girls to other people, which we know he did. But it's also that when someone, like when my roommate brought me to him, she likely got money for me. Yeah. So she was the trafficker in that case, in that moment. So I think that people would rather go into these... I hate to use this word because it's not glamorous, but it's what James Bond. It's James Bond. It's like what you said. This James Bond thing rather than just being like, and you know what? He raped me. And it was one time. I wonder how many other survivors it was just once. I mean, I know that the FBI says that they believe there's about 1,200. We've all talked. It's more than that. When you add in the number of people that it was probably just once, and not even probably all the girls we know of from overseas, we think it's way more than that.
Yeah, you hear Amanda Ungaro, Zampoli's ex. She talks about being on a plane, 30 kids.
Yes.
You know, where are those kids? They're not all at an island. They're not all.
Exactly. And I think that when I see people talk, like, I'm like, you go do your research. If that's how you want to spend your time, you know, when you're ready to talk about the trauma that you're perpetuating across the internet, then we can talk and I'll give you a little bit of information. I've had plenty of people say to me that they know more about this than I do. And I'm like, all right, yay, you.
No, yeah, plenty. But even some of these legendary experts with podcasts and books and stuff. Where are they getting their information from? But now,
I don't know.
What do you think? I don't know either, man. You know, no. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about this whole?
This is good. This is good. I think Epstein survivors. We've started to recognize how many people make money off of us. And we're talking about, and Ed, just, I want to also clarify that, like, I am grateful to be invited to your podcast. I hope that you are making money off of sponsors. This is not that case. I think information is really important to get out there, and me being able to share about my app, which you so graciously said, hey, like, how can we give you a plug for what your company is doing? That's awesome. I'm really grateful. I'm talking about things like, Vanity Fair had asked a bunch of us to come out to New York City to do a spread. Then they didn't pay for anybody to come. Like, we had to come out on our own dime, pay for our own travel, hotel, food, all that. They wanted a whole day long of interviews and photo shoots. And I didn't go because I was like, I can't just pay for myself to be in Vanity Fair. Like, I'm not going to do that. But a couple of the survivors did. And some of them got cut from that magazine article.
Oh my God.
Now, how much, they took their time, they took their money, they shared their experience, and then they were completely cut at the last minute. And so I think people think we're somehow making money out there, and we're not. I actually, when I go to DC, we do have the nonprofit. World Without Exploitation has been absolutely instrumental in all the change that people are seeing. So if they want to donate somewhere, please go to World Without Exploitation. They are the ones that pay for our travel to get to DC. They put us up in hotels. They take us around in Ubers. They buy us dinner at least one of the nights that we're there. But other than that, Ed, it costs me about $150 to $175 a day for me to advocate to head to DC. And sometimes I'm there once or twice a month. It feels like the right thing to do. Like, we're in this historic moment, and it feels really important to do right now. It feels like it's something I cannot turn my back on, and it comes at a cost. And the only people not like, literally the only people making $0 on it, like zero. And so I wish people understood that when they, I get calls all the time for we're making a documentary. Will you please call me back? Do you know how many people are making a documentary and how many people want my time? But you're going to get to be in my documentary. Look at all my awards, but will not pay for a survivor to travel to do that or they'll pay for travel, but not consider that, oh wait, I have to have childcare, doggy daycare, I have to have parking at the airport, I am paying for all my other transportation time. Like, it still costs us.
But wait a
money.
second, worse than that, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm at the edge of my seat over here. Worse than that, some of these documentary people,
Yes.
You got to sign an NDA with this person, a non-compete agreement with this person.
Yes.
And some of them, these contracts, they control any word that comes out of your mouth.
Yep.
They own it. They're paying you
Exactly.
nothing, but they want to own everything you say. And then they keep it. Now they control you. They have control over you, and you can't be out there talking to your own, going after Blanche. You can't, because you signed an agreement with some guy. They're dangling something in front of you to control you, which is a big question I have for you. I scream from the rooftop that the Epstein story is controlled by the Epstein people. I've been screaming about this for years. And then it comes out how involved Bannon was. I've been talking about Bannon for 2014, 2015. Wolf. I've been talking about Wolf, this guy, man. He's buddies with Epstein. I've been talking about, he was buddies with Bannon, too. I've been talking about this for years. And I'm not going to mention some other names because they're more popular. But, the Epstein people control the Epstein story is my position. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, of course, that makes perfect sense, especially based on everything we're seeing, right? Like, it's...
They're all friends. They're all Mar-a-Lago members.
Friends.
All of them.
Until the American public realize that it's not right versus left, it's top versus bottom, like, we're never going to get out of this.
Let's see what else is in my notes. Have you ever received any threats or intimidation?
I have not personally experienced it in my life walking around in the world. Yeah. I've had some horrific things said to me online. Absolutely horrific things. And a lot of people think, that's online, it's to be expected. But, I could tell that there was a point when my social media following grew, I was like, oh, here come the bots. You can, where you're then targeted for that. And that can be extremely frustrating. I mean, on LinkedIn too, it's very funny. I will have people come on to my LinkedIn posts correcting me on my expertise when this is not their expertise. Yeah. So it's not threatening, but it's more annoying. It goes back to what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I know. Do you think that's organized? Because I know there definitely is. There's a thing called weaponized mental illness, where they take people with mental illness and they sick them on you. See what I'm talking about? But now, do you think that's organized trolling against you, or just poor innocent folks, just well-meaning? Some are well-meaning.
Yeah. I can't say, but I will tell you, I have had things like I have some survivor that was reaching out to me and she was like, I'm sending police to you. I can't believe you dare show your face. Like, she's going on and on about this story. And I was like, I'm sorry, ma'am, you must have the wrong person. It's not the wrong, like, she is wildly out there.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And she just went like crazy for several Facebook messages. Yep. And I'm like, nope, I think you're thinking about the wrong person. Sorry. And finally I just blocked her. I was like, if she doesn't, like, I commented on a couple things. I was like, well, wait a minute. How how old do you think I am? Because I was 22 in 1991. And yeah, so she wouldn't listen. It didn't matter what I said. So I was like, okay, you're not even listening to math, like simple math. So no, I'm not going to do this. So I don't know if she was sent, but I've definitely experienced mentally unwell people. And I have to say a lot of them are the ones that have been the most harmful have been people that have said they're survivors.
Right. And just because you are legitimately a survivor, you are legitimately involved in all this, doesn't make you an expert on blackmail and world affairs and all these other things.
Exactly. Yeah. It also doesn't make you, I mean, I see a lot of survivors that do a lot of talking that aren't necessarily very trauma informed.
That's interesting.
And so there's, I think that word gets thrown around a lot without people really understanding it. And yeah, it's rough out there. It's a wild, wild west out there. And I'm noticing it more. I mean, last year, Ed, I had like 4,000 followers and it was all just based on neuroscience and trauma, sexual harm and blah, blah, blah. And now with this case blowing up in the last year, I mean, I'm over 125,000 followers across all of my platforms. And at first it was extremely uncomfortable just in my body. Like it felt very unnerving to know this many eyes were on the worst, this horrific moment in my life. And it took a while to adjust. And now I just see how it also just can bring out sometimes the worst in people and sometimes the best in people. I got to tell you, I have extremely fulfilling experiences when I go speak in person and the people I get to talk to after I do a keynote somewhere and the people that I get to connect with that really appreciate. They're like, why hasn't anybody ever done sexual assault first aid as a protocol before? Because nobody knows what to do when somebody tells them they've been harmed. And, so I do have extremely fulfilling experiences as an advocate. And as an extremely public advocate, I see the worst in people.
I hear you.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
I hear you. And there's power and energy and all that focus and intention of having so many people focused on you, which sometimes it's good and sometimes.
And I'm not one, this is what I think is funny too. Yeah. I'm not a survivor that goes into the nitty gritty of all the dramatic things. I'm like, let's talk about the amygdala. So I'm not even a survivor. There are survivors out there that I know like have these incredible platforms and they want to talk about all that stuff. And sometimes I'll even have them reach out to me like, well, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I don't care. I want to talk about the amygdala.
You got your niche, your niche there.
I have a niche. Yes, I have a niche. Yes.
And it's an important one too. Once again, it's called, hashtag with you too. So give us as we're exiting, because I can't give you for 3 hours. Okay. What do you call it? As we're exiting, once again, describe what is with you too, and why should people download it right now while we're on the phone?
Right now. Yeah. Right now. So it's hashtag with you too. It's in the App Store and Google Play, and it is a sexual assault first aid protocol. And this is what I want people to remember is that, just like we know you can't learn CPR on YouTube while someone's having a heart attack, right? You learn it in advance. So the app is like your 911. Somebody tells you they've been harmed, you can go right into the app and you can click through and go through the 90-day protocol of how to be the best support for them. Because from research, we know that if someone that has been sexually harmed is surrounded by safety, trust, and support for 90 days, that is a natural recovery period for the body. And so you can significantly diminish the chance of them getting PTSD.
And it's like Narcan. You know what I mean?
It's just like having it. It's exactly. It's like knowing 911. It's like knowing where the fire extinguisher is. It's like having a can of Narcan. It's like having the defibrillators in schools. It's like having EpiPens. It's just so you have the protocol. If something happens, you are a safe person. And so what we do in that 90 days also, and even before that, there's a little bit of education in there, and you learn about that it's really normal to freeze. It is a natural thing to freeze during a sexual harm experience. It is a completely natural thing. It is a completely normal thing to happen that you appease that person. And what's interesting, Ed, and really pissed me off, yes, I took off my own dress. No one ever berates a person for handing over their wallet to someone robbing them.
That is such a good point. That's such a good point. Yeah.
No one ever asks a question about that. But when I say I couldn't do anything else, like my brain just shut down, it is involuntary and it is automatic, and your prefrontal cortex, where all your thinking happens, just completely shut down. So until people start to understand that, that's why we have a little bit of education in the app to destigmatize some of the things that happen before, during, and after sexual harm. And then we have a 90-day protocol that makes it super simple to support someone. There's also a 90-day protocol. It's actually a new protocol we're putting in to support yourself if it happens to you. But ideally, we want you to surround yourself with safe people for 90 days.
Gotcha. Jess Micheals, JessMichealsSpeaks.com. Jess, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this. And any time in the future you ever have anything, you can call me off there, whatever you need. But you ever need to come on the air and promote something, or there's something on your heart that you want to talk about, just give me a call. We'll put you right on the air.
Thank you, Ed. My book will be coming out at some point, so I'll let you know.
Well, there you go, man. As soon as it does. I'm known for getting authors on the show before their book. The ink is not even dry yet. I've said that 10
Amazing.
I've said
You're
that
on
so
my
many
list.
times. Oh, yeah. Do you have a publisher ready to go?
No, we're on the third draft of the proposal, so we're getting closer. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Jess Micheals, JessMichealsSpeaks.com, and Jess Micheals Speaks on Facebook, Instagram. Threads is the popular one. And also to 3joannes.com is where you could find the information about this app here, the hashtag with you too. Jess Micheals, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.